I was feeling a little bit nostalgic the other day when I started the process of writing for this show, so I thought it was time to take a look back at where two of the most high-performance snowmobiles on the market today came from, the Yamaha SRX and the Arctic Cat Thundercat, two sleds that I absolutely enjoy riding every time I get to pull the trigger on one. So I hope you enjoy this look back. The rivalry between the SRX and the Thundercat goes back a couple of decades now to the glory days of greasy old triples, back when the top speed of a sled was its most important characteristic, one that the snowmobile manufacturers would sell on. Other details like comfort, handling, and big bump suspensions were often sacrificed on the altar of speed. And this was okay. We really didn't know any better, but things did change in the industry. The rider forward designs began to appear, and consumers began to demand better rough trail capabilities, not to mention the increasing popularity of two-stroke twins. All this spelled the death of the high-speed triples, and for a long time, hypersleds capable of easily running down the 100-mile-an-hour barrier were a thing of the past. All this happened right around the time Yamaha laid to rest the SRX 700 Triple Triple and introduced the first performance four-stroke to the market, the RX-1. And for a couple of years, its motorcycle-derived four-cylinder engine ran with the likes of the Machs, XCRs, and Thundercats. Although speedy and brought an entirely new sound to the performance snowmobile market, it wasn't the fastest sled on the snow, or frankly, the best handling. The Pro-Action rear suspension of the RX-1 was a holdover from the previous generation two-stroke models and simply wasn't in the same league as its competitors. Out front, Yamaha did update to a double A-arm design and got away from the trailing arm systems of the past, and it wasn't bad, but overall the chassis design just wasn't well suited to the stand-up rider forward movement that was about to hit the snow in 2003 with Skidoo's Rev. The RX-1 was still an amazing sled to ride, and the shriek of the four-cylinder mill at 12,000 RPM was magic. Now, I still remember riding the RX-1 for the first time and feeling a few mixed emotions about it. On one hand, it sounded like nothing else on the snow and it was completely new. On the other hand, the RX-1 shelved the SRX, a sled that made a near perfect two-stroke whale and was one of my favorite sleds at the time. Riding the RX-1, it had a very traditional feel to it with feet forward and hand hanging off the seat. Now, there was no denying it was fast, plus its fit and finish was arguably the best on the market, and the new four-stroke promised tens of thousands of kilometers of reliability. Without a doubt, Yamaha proved performance four-strokes were possible in the snowmobile market and here to stay. But right when the RX-1 dropped, the life cycles of sleds like the Moxie, Thundercat, and XCR were in their sunset, and the popularity of snowcross racing was increasing, and the phenomenon of the stand-up style of riding Blair Morgan brought to the party were simply taking over. The evidence of this was the Skidoo Rev, something completely new, sitting right next to the RX-1 on the trails. The requirements of packaging the components of a snowmobile to promote the rider-forward revolution was just one more nail in the coffin of the triple two-strokes, which were all about to go away. At the time, having the chance to ride both the RX-1 and Rev platforms, I couldn't help but feel just a little bit sorry for Yamaha, having committed to a very expensive new chassis which handcuffed them to the traditional foot-forward rider layout, and knowing that things in the snowmobile world had just changed. Fast forward about 10 years, and by now all the manufacturers had worked through their transitional chassis to ones designed from the ground up with rider forward in mind. Now, the last to abandon this ship was again Yamaha with their Apex, which ended its production run in model year 2018. By this time in its lifespan, the Yamaha Delta Box chassis had evolved to include the first power steering system on a snowmobile and other highly technical features like the Yamaha reactive suspension system that linked the front shocks together with an adjustable valve to control the amount of body roll. And there was even details like chassis dampeners to improve the rider experience. Now, even today, the Apex sled is still one that's highly desirable to some riders who never really felt at home with the modern riding positions, plus they like the power steering. It could be argued that some of these features were included to extend the relevance of the Delta Box chassis that remained pretty much unchanged from its introduction in 2003 with the RX-1, and you might be right thinking that way. But it also needs to be acknowledged that throughout that time, Yamaha succeeded in their goal to prove that four-strokes had a place in the performance snowmobile market, as other manufacturers dipped their toes into this four-stroke space, both with and without success. On a sidebar, you might be thinking about Yamaha's Nitro as their answer to Rider Forward, which it kind of did. It definitely draws its lineage from the last years Yamaha was involved in snowcross racing. But by 2017, its production run had come and gone. So for the purposes of this story, let's leave it out and the Yamaha Viper, because neither one of those sleds could be considered a hypersled. Likewise, I'm also going to leave out the new Polaris Boost from this story, because even though the sled has amazing speed, I don't think it's set up for ultimate speed like the SRX is. So to make that comparison fair, I'm going to wait for Polaris to reintroduce a sled like the Ultra or the Storm into this category. I hope you're listening, Polaris. By 2016, the bromance between Yamaha and Arctic Cat was gaining momentum with their engineering partnership that married together Arctic Cat chassis and Yamaha engines. But this relationship was about to get a whole lot steamier with the introduction of turbocharged forced induction. Beginning in model year 2017, Arctic Cat introduced the 9000 C-Tech 4 alongside Yamaha's 998 Genesis Turbo. These sleds signified a solid marriage between the two manufacturers that continues to this day. Now, at a conservative estimate of 180 horsepower, with most saying 200 ponies at sea level, this engine and chassis combination set the stage for a comeback of the high-speed lake racer type snowmobile. Back now are the once familiar names like Thundercat, SRX, and even Mach Z, although that was just for 1 year in 2022. Polaris's XCR is in the mix as well, but it's currently staying true to its origins as a cross-country racer and is more at home devouring big bumps than in the pursuit of flat-out speed on the lakes like the others. Coming full circle in 2023, we still have the two hypersled titans of the market, the Yamaha SRX and the Arctic Cat Thundercat. These bad boys are still at the top of the heap when it comes to horsepower at 200 or so, which has been at this level since their reintroduction. Arctic Cat's Thundercat beat the SRX to market by 1 year in 2017, but by model year 2018, the band was back together and both sleds could be found on the snow. For that year, each sled was pretty much identical to the other, optimized for speed with 1-inch lug tracks and lower slung suspensions. In fact, other than the color, skis, and a little bit of clutching differences, the machines were essentially the same. Since 2018, the TCAT and SRX have been updated as you'd expect a chassis would be over its life cycle. Since its production, things like clutching have been updated and front suspension geometries have been changed, but the big news now for 2023 is that both sleds have been updated with EPS, electronic power steering. Then there's the color changes. The SRX has seen more variation here, going between blue and black along with a red and white heritage theme in 2022. And if you've been watching STV, you know my feelings on a blue SRX. It's just the way it should be. Now, Arctic Cat, on the other hand, has kept the classy black theme going the whole time. Still, these models have slowly diverged, just slightly, but significantly. Currently, where these models differ the most is in the track choice from each manufacturer. The SRX has kept the 1-inch lug Ripsaw 2 for that ultimate goal of speed, where Cat has added just a little bit of lug height, bringing its lug up to 1¼ inches. Both have their place, and even though it's just a 1/4 inch difference in lug height between the two sleds, they do feel very different to ride. Looking into the future, there's a new story to this chapter that could be coming out. The SRX and TCAT are in chassis that are getting a little on in age, and Arctic Cat has just unveiled a new platform, the Catalyst. However, it's only available in a 600 two-stroke for now. The question is, will the turbo engine fit in the new chassis? I'm betting it does. But what's that look like? Will there even be a new version of the TCAT and SRX? I don't know, but I sure hope it does. It still might be a few production seasons away, but by judging on the sales performance of these two machines, both new and in the used market, I'd say we'll continue to see these names on the sides of sleds for years to come. And personally, I'm going to be looking forward to pulling the trigger on those sleds too. Hypersleds will always be a small part of the snowmobile market and always command top dollar, which keeps them out of reach for a lot of us riders. But the technological improvements in this segment will filter down into the rest of the lines, into the sleds that you and I ride. Now, in my position here as host of Snowmobiler Television, I definitely appreciate the fact that I get to pull the triggers on these machines, but they're outside of my budget as well. Although one day I might be able to update my fleet of old triple sleds into a fleet of old turbos.